Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. We have a great show this evening. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Bernie Siegel about his new book, The Art of Healing. And in the second hour, we're going to be speaking with Zahara Hieronymus. Yeah, I think I said that right. About earth changes and the power of consciousness. But before we get there, I'd like to remind you that Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitutes.com, where you can find out about all the things that I have going on, classes. You can sign up for sessions, read articles, check out YouTube videos. There's just tons of stuff. But Just Energy Radio can be heard live every Thursday evening here on the Inception Radio Network. But if you can't make it to a live show, you can always check out our archives at the www.justenergyradio website, where we have getting very, very close to 7 years of show archives, all free to download. All we ask is that you do sign up for our newsletter to keep you informed of the guests that are coming up, but it is not required because we're just that way. Or you can check out the archives on our YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio, on youtube.com. Or you can come here to the Inception Radio Network, www.inceptionradionetwork.com, and listen live or to the archives or to the other great programming that's on the station. Just a couple of quick announcements. November 2nd, November 3rd, November 2nd in spooky Jefferson, Texas is the History, Haunts, and Legends Conference, one of my favorite events to do every year, twice a year. Because there's presentations all day. I'm there doing readings and session work with people. Then we go and do investigations of like 4 or 5 different haunted locations in one of the top 10 haunted cities in the United States. So how can you beat that? Anyway, that's History, Haunts, and Legends Conference, Jefferson, Texas, November 2nd. And so I've been getting some more details, and I kind of put out a little teaser the other day, and I don't fully have all the details. But actually, hang on, if I'm really slick, the wonders of the internet. But then I would have to remember what the webpage is. Maybe for the second hour, I'll remember what the webpage is and bring it up. But I am working with a gentleman named Bruce Cunningham, and planning on hosting a tour to Indonesia, where we are going to be going to the main site of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Now, if you've watched any of the Ancient Alien shows on TV or some of those other shows on, ancient history, this is the site that has those giant carved faces in Asia. And there are 4 of these faces, one on each side of the building. Really cool. Very, very reasonable ticket price. I know they're working on finalizing the pricing, but it's going to be very reasonable, all inclusive. When I get more information, I will pass it on to you to check out. And let's see, anything else? That's pretty much it for announcements today. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Bernie and get him on the air. Dr. Bernie Siegel is a well-known proponent of alternative approaches to health that heal not just the body, but the mind and soul as well. Bernie, as his friends and patients call him, studied medicine at College University and Cornell University Medical College. In 1978, Bernie pioneered a new approach to group and individual cancer therapy called ECAP, Exceptional Cancer Patients. His innovative methods used drugs or patients' drawings, dreams, and feelings and broke new ground in facilitating important lifestyle changes while engaging patients in the healing process. So the author of The Art of Healing, and Dr. Bernie Siegel. Hey, Dr. Bernie, how are you?
Okay, Dr. Rita. The first thing that's hard for me not to talk about is consciousness. You know, what you were talking about before you introduced me. And what I've realized really is, and why I talk about the art of healing, Carl Jung, I don't know, maybe 90 or 100 years ago, diagnosed a brain tumor from a dream. You never meet a doctor who's ever been told that in training. The first time I did a guided imagery, which I didn't believe in, for Dr. Carl Simonton at a workshop, I met an inner guide, a fellow named George, and I drew his picture for Elizabeth Kubler-Ross a few years later when she was asking me about my life. And so here he is, you know, what he looks like with the beard and so forth. And twice while I've been lecturing, the first time I realized I wasn't giving the lecture, and I just spoke for 2 hours. And somebody came up, said, I heard you before, that was better than usual. And the second person came up from the audience and said, there was a man standing in front of you for the entire lecture, so I drew his picture for you. And it was George. And again, speaking at a Christian funeral one day, the mystic Alga Worrell and healer also knew the gentleman who died. And she came up to me when I was standing alone in the hallway and said, Bernie, are you Jewish? I said, why are you asking? Because I spoke at a Christian funeral? She said, no, there's a rabbi standing next to you. And she described George again in detail. And then I understood all his garments he was wearing, the cap on his head and everything else. Because at first, you know, even though I would be talking to him and meeting him in meditations, I didn't understand why he was dressed that way. But the explanation that he's a rabbi. And all I keep saying is to people, believe in what you experience. Don't block your mind and what you are willing to look at and experience by your beliefs. So open your mind and receive, even if you can't explain, you know, like quantum physicists and astronomers. They're open because they can't explain the universe, but they're studying it. And I think that consciousness is an incredible, you know, part of us and exists even without the body. I mean, I've had a near-death experience and a whole host of other things. And it's part of what opened me up to all my patients' experiences. And they weren't afraid to share with me and talk with me. And when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross knew so much about my life from my drawing of my meditation scene, which was, you know, just made up in my mind, but I couldn't believe how much she knew about me from this, what I thought was a meaningless drawing. Let me just give people an example. That her first question to me was, Bernie, what are you covering up? I said, why do you ask that? What are you talking about? She said, Bernie, you put snow on a mountain. I said, yeah, it's a mountain with snow. Bernie, the page is white. You took a white crayon and added a layer. What are you covering up? And it had to do with my feelings as a physician and what led me into all this work, that all the things you can't cure, how you're not prepared by medical school or your training to deal with loss and complications and all the pain that people are going through. You know, and I always say I became a doctor for healthy reasons. I like people. And then it was really painful because I didn't realize I may like them, but I can't fix everything and cure everything. And that's why I set out with the ECAP, because one of the patients at this conference that I went to that Carl Simonton ran, and by the way, I thought this was a conference for doctors, 125 people in the audience. I was the only doctor there. but my patients now sat around me. And one said, she had breast cancer, young woman, "You're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me, so I need to know how to live between office visits." And that redirected me to help people live. And I learned how many people aren't interested in living when they have to come to a meeting, read a book, draw a picture. They're into guilt, shame, blame, failure, how they were parented and brought up, and they're afraid to participate and become what I call a responsible participant, not a
but it requires
patient.
work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, compliance is a joke. When you ask people, can you make a list of 10 things and bring it with you to your next appointment, and they can't even do that. It's like, really? You could have sat in the parking lot 5 seconds before the visit and at least faked it.
I sent 100 letters to people from our office with cancer saying, you want to live a longer, better life, come to a meeting. And I'm expecting hundreds of people to show up because the secretary didn't put in that this is just for those who received the letter. And a dozen women showed up. And I thought, you don't know the people you're taking care of. And that's when I began to get to know them and what they're experiencing. And also what doctors don't do, I began to meet people I thought were dead. I mean, that may sound crazy, but you go out to give a lecture and in the audience is somebody you thought had died, who never came back to the office. And what I learned was they always had a story to tell about why they didn't die. I mean, one that I had to laugh about, ultimately, a gentleman in our group said, I'm going to Colorado to die in the mountains. It's beautiful there. I said to the family, notify me when he dies. I'll come to the funeral because I feel very close to him. A year goes by. I have received no message from the family. I was really angry. So I called them up, to tell them, how can you ignore me and what I asked? The fellow answered the phone. I said, what's going on? He said, well, it was so beautiful here, I forgot to die. And, those may sound like crazy little things, but if doctors, when a patient came in, if a doctor said, here, take this list, it's what I've learned from patients who did, exceptionally well, didn't die when they were supposed to. And there are lists and personality profiles, and I share those things with people to empower them and help them to know. So they've got a coach, let's put it that way. And if they're willing to show up for practice, I keep coaching them.
But that's good. I mean, because when you deal with most doctors, it just seems like, they're so distant, or they have no compassion, or you end up leaving their office, and you just feel like you just bought them a new car.
Right.
It's like cha-ching, cha-ching. It's like, really?
One of them used the term detached concern. To me, it's like, how can you be detached and have concern? I said, a better term would be rational caring. I mean, that you're really caring for people. But one of the things, to get back to drawings for a minute and what's in the book, and part of why I wanted them in there, it shows anatomy. It shows about people's relationships, feelings about themselves. And again, it's through consciousness. You will know, like a doctor friend of mine has 8 kids. How are they dealing with my cancer? I said, draw a picture. He said, they're all over the country. I said, that's no problem. You will know. And one of his kids is a lawyer. And as a lawyer said, while learning to think, I almost forgot how to feel. And it's obvious the lawyer is the one he needs to call up. He's in a black suit, no arms, reaching out to touch anybody else in the family, standing by himself. And I said, hey, Frank, give him a call because he needs to hear from you. He's having problems dealing with this. And, those are the things that appear in the drawing. And anatomy, that as a physician, I couldn't believe what patients were portraying. And they didn't always know what they were drawing. But I know anatomy, so I know when I'm looking at their picture, they're displaying what's inside their body and telling me that they need surgery, don't need surgery, or what the diagnosis is, or what the best choice of treatment is, a whole host of things. But when medical students were asked, draw yourself working as a doctor, I couldn't believe the pictures I got. 95% are, I'm sitting behind a desk with the diploma on the wall behind me. No patient. Some pictures have no human beings in them. I couldn't believe that. The instructions are draw yourself working as a doctor. What's in the picture is all kinds of equipment and computers. And the healthiest one drawing that I'm pretty sure is in the book with the worst one is a young medical student kneeling in front of a woman in a wheelchair, his arm around her, handing her a tissue. He knows what being a doctor is about. You know, it's not putting a stethoscope on her chest or handing her a pill to take. It's handing her a tissue if she needs it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, when you when you do these pictures, I mean, is there a question? I mean, because I was reading through the book and I'm going, well, if somebody just said, draw me a picture, and it was just this wide open landscape of draw me a picture, I don't know that I would really be able to focus. I probably would, do my basic little house with the little funky cloud with the little stick people because, that's about all it ever gets. Or is there a question or is there a thought that, you see the person with to see what comes up?
Well, both
with
things.
That.
You see, if somebody comes to me, well, like one man, he said, I don't really want chemotherapy. I said, draw a picture of yourself getting chemotherapy. And he drew a beautiful picture. It's golden colored, flowing right to his cancer. I said to him, intuitively, this is the right thing and good for you. Don't be afraid. Go ahead. Now, somebody else will draw the devil giving them poison. And I'll tell them, if that's how you're going to feel, don't go. Don't do it. But if you want to do it, then we have to change your image. And we can do that by visualizing, receiving the treatment, doing beautifully, no side effects, going home hungry, and so forth. And then if they do that 3, 4, 5 times a day for a week later, they draw a beautiful picture because they have reprogrammed their body. I mean, literally, the body doesn't know what you're really going through versus what you're, acting as if you're going through. And we can get into that too, how powerful the mind is. But there are times also where you say, draw a scene. See, there are things in it that are meaningful. Like, again, I drew 11 trees in my picture. Elizabeth said, why is 11 important? I said, I've been doing this work 11 months. I mean, that just came right out of me. So when a reporter comes to see me and doesn't believe in all the crazy stuff I'm doing, I say to her, draw a picture, and she puts a clock in the picture with one hand pointed at 12. So to shake her up, I said, what happened when you were 12 years old? And then comes the abuse and the tears and a change in the interview. Or another woman, drew a broken heart, 21 drops of blood coming out of it. I mean, like a Valentine heart. And I said, what happened when you were 21? She had been sexually abused multiple times and was having all kinds of pelvic problems that nobody could cure. But it's all that stuff that's stored in them. So again, it doesn't have to be, life-threatening or medical problems. If one of our kids says, I don't know where to go to college, I say, fine, draw all the colleges you're thinking about. See? Who should I marry? What job should I take? Where should I live? Put down the choices and we'll look at it. Or even if you put it on one page, there's past, present, and future, so we know where you're headed. See, Jung said it well. The future is unconsciously prepared long in advance and therefore can be guessed by clairvoyance. So when people put the images there, they're projecting the future and the past and the present. It's just, as I say, I didn't know any of this, thought I was discovering incredible things. Sent them to medical journals. It came back saying interesting but inappropriate for our journal. I sent them to where it's appropriate, psychology and psychiatry journals. They send it back saying it's appropriate, but it's not interesting. We know all this. That really got me angry, because to think that you go through all these years of training and nobody presents what I call making the invisible visible, so that you could really know what is going on within your life as well as your patient's life and your family's life. I say this to people all the time. You have children at home, say to the kids, I want to decorate the refrigerator, draw out the home and family. Then you know how your kids are feeling about the home and family. It could be something as simple, there's no chimney on the house. How does the hot air get out? Or mom's in the kitchen, dad's at work, I'm in my bedroom, my brother's in the front yard. That's not a family. And then you have other families where mama's touching everybody in the family, and everybody in the family's touching at least two other people. And I call that a real family circle, and you feel good about it. Or a kid with cancer.
I mean, is that like a good touching, or could it be bad touching?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. And when you sit with the person, you can discuss it. Because I always mention this one boy who brought me a totally black picture. And I thought, oh, boy, we got a problem here. Until he said, I got two older brothers. That's the only crayon they give me. And so you have to have the person to dialogue with. If somebody emails me a picture, I just put down a bunch of, suggestions. Why do you have 4 flowers? Why do you this? Why do you that? What's that hole, in the tree? You see, because, again, the tree can represent the person's life. And one young lady I know, she put a big black knothole in the tree, and those were the years that her father sexually abused her. Because if you measure the tree and relate it to her age, you know what years that happened. So, as I say, all this is known by Jungian therapists and art therapists, except the anatomy part. They're not informed with anatomy. So, as one therapist said to me, and I mentioned her book, Susan Bach, in my book, she said Jung was fascinated by the somatic aspects. I said, yes, because he knew anatomy. And I began to bring her pictures to show her. And you don't have to be a doctor, because I, put some in that people can look at, where there are 2 sails on a boat with marks on them that look like nipples on the sail. And if you say to people, what is this woman, where does she have a problem? Everybody, of course, says immediately, oh, her breasts, because that's what she's displaying. And, or a woman who said, my mother, sister, and I have breast cancer. I don't know whether to have a mastectomy or not. What should I do? Oh, you like pictures. I brought you a picture. She handed me a picture she drew of a tree. Every branch on the tree ended flat. And I said to her, this is not normal tree. It's been pruned. She said, thank you. That means I should have a mastectomy. And then she, went and had it. And yes, reconstruction. I mean, she's doing what she wanted to do. But she was, responding from her inner wisdom. It wasn't me telling her what to do. It was me pointing out certain symbols. And then she immediately has an interpretation for them. And let me say this, that the consciousness blinds you. I mean, I've drawn pictures, we have 5 children, of our family, to impress everybody. What a wonderful family. We're all hugging, touching. When I looked at this picture, because it was in a group of people we were all drawing, I'm going to show it, one of the boys who was driving us nuts at the time wasn't touching his brother on either side. And I thought, how could that happen? I set out to make sure everybody was. And that's what impressed me. Again, the unconscious can blind you, so you draw things you didn't want to draw or think you drew. And I always say to people, if you draw a picture and want to analyze your own picture, look at it the next day. Then you're looking at it as if someone else drew it. Then you can intellectually look at it and judge what's in it. And let me add one more thing, because I never stop talking, I know. But in the book is a picture my wife drew at the same time. And I said, one of the kids is driving us nuts. At the top of the page, she drew 5 trees, 4 in line, 1 out of line below them. At the bottom of the page, she drew 4 flowers on one side and 3 on the other, and 6 cattails between them. Now, I was trying to encourage this boy to go off to college and, get started on his life and education. When I saw the picture, I knew he decided to go. Why? Because when she drew the picture, 5 of us were home. We have twins and this other boy. And 2 were away at school. 6 cattails. 6 weeks from the day of that drawing, he left home to join his brother in Denver and go to school there. When I saw that picture, the pressure was off, if you know what I mean. I didn't have to encourage him to leave home. I knew he'd made up his mind and was going. I mean, I have to say, I didn't know if it was going to be 6 minutes or 6 years, but I knew that he was going to go.
So it sounds like, by using the drawings, we can take some unconscious belief, or idea, and bring it to the surface, but I think it's interesting that the way that it ends up emerging is, in a series of symbols.
Yes. Yeah. And as I said, it's revealing things that if you talk to people intellectually, they think, and you don't get through to that. Because most people, I like the term, let your heart make up your mind. If people really paid attention to their feelings, that would help them a lot too, make the right choices and decisions. But they're so busy thinking. They're worrying, am I doing the right thing? And there's two aspects to all of us, what I call the intuitive aspect or the consciousness part, and then the intellectual part. And the two of them need to agree, or you're going to have lots of problems. So again, it doesn't matter if it's somebody you marry, a job you take, or your treatment. If there's conflict, I think this is the right thing to do, but your intuition says it's wrong. Or you say it's the wrong thing and your intuition knows it's right. There's still inner conflict and you have side effects. And that's what I mean, some of the exceptional things too, when I talk about mind body, I mean, a patient is being radiated and the radiation therapist calls me up. He said, I thought the machine was broken until I saw your name in the chart. Then I knew it was a crazy patient. So I went into her and I said, how come you have no side effects to your treatment? She said, I get out of the way and let it go to my tumor. Then we have people who are not being radiated due to the machine being repaired, nobody putting the material back in, and the radiation therapist didn't know it for an entire month until he did his routine inspection. I said to him, you have to understand what you're telling me, because he said, oh, I feel terrible, what I just discovered. I said, look, all of your patients acted as if they were being treated. Or you would have known they weren't being treated. So they had red skin, other side effects, shrinking tumors. And he said, oh my God, you're right. That's, you see, what impresses me as a doctor, that when people thought they were being treated, their body responded as if they were. And that's why doctors need to know this and do what I call deceive people into health. In other words, speak to them in a way that's therapeutic and helps them, not, like the television commercials with all the side effects of some pill. You'd say, well, why the hell would you ever want to take it? If it can kill you, I'd rather have a headache. And we need to know how to talk to people so we enhance the positive benefits and decrease the negative ones. It's hypnotic. An authority figure speaks to you. So when you're a child, your parents have that effect. And then it's doctors, teachers, clergy, all telling you things.
Well, see, you should just be like the doctor for the whole planet, because...
Yes.
That, all right, I'm going to share with you, and I have not even talked about this on air at all. So this is going to be my first time, and hopefully I will hold it together here. So my husband recently died of cancer, and we went to the oncologist, and he was like, well, we can do chemo, and we're going to set you up for radiation, and we're going to do them both at the same time. We need to be really aggressive and blah, 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 blah. And then finally I stopped him, because what I'm hearing in my head is cha-ching, cha-ching. I finally stopped him. I go, okay, so what are we talking about? 50-50? Something, anything. And he turned around and said, oh, there's a 1% chance. I'm like, are you serious? You want him to go through all of that for a 1% survival? Really? Needless to say,
yeah,
I wanted to fire the doctor on that first visit.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they haven't experienced it. There's a doctor from Sloan Kettering. He wrote a book called Healing Lessons when his wife developed cancer. And in the book, he said, I want to apologize to Dr. Siegel. I called him up. I said, what are you apologizing for? You never caused me any trouble. He said, I was apologizing for what I thought of you. Now that my wife has cancer, you're a big help. You see, before that, you're crazy. But again, if you showed up with your husband, I'd said, okay, you got a 1% chance. Let me show you what those 1% have done. To try to say, here, you have the potential. You're not a statistic. 99 may die, but if one survives, maybe we can teach you what that one was like and help you. And I have to say, the reason I've kept this up for over 3 decades is there are a lot of people who should be dead who aren't. And to me, it's love your life, love your body, that we look at what are the issues that may have got you sick now. And doctors, again, would yell at me, you're making your patients feel guilty, because I would talk to them about their life. Like what you've just been through. Your husband dies. Yeah, you're more likely to have something happen to yourself now. See, we know from studies, loneliness affects the genes that control immune function. So again, it's not blaming you, but asking you what's happened in your life. And that way, if you get people to love their life and their body, some amazing things happen. So it's, again, not trying not to die. Let me put it another way. I love Mother Teresa. And a lot of these things, articles are on my website that I've written, deceiving people into health and waging a war against cancer. But what she said was, I will not attend an anti-war rally, but if you ever have a peace rally, call me. So I'm trying to get people to heal their lives, you see, and find peace. The benefit is they then live longer than they expected. I mean, some simple things. A multimillionaire down in Florida that I met for breakfast one day because his son drove me crazy. And that's a good sign. See, that's a survivor. So we met for breakfast and we talked. And he was told he had 2 months to live. One of the things he did was cancel the dress code at work. Say, no more ties, no more suits, just whatever you want to wear, go ahead. He did other things too. Bought a house on the ocean so he could sit on the porch, listen to Bernie Siegel's meditation tapes. Well, he lived for over 5 years. And he and I became friends, and whenever I was down in Miami, he would be there to introduce me, and I would point out how he was dressed for the event, and discuss that with people. But again, somebody else gets a dog. Somebody quits their law office and starts playing a violin. The fellow who went to Colorado. I mean, there are people in Colorado who have no idea why that helped him. I always say to them, I think you need to move to Florida. But it's, again, when you accept your mortality and say, then let me enjoy the day, then things begin to happen. So you're not trying not to die. I mean, I've written many times and talked about a landscaper that I operated on. When he retired, he developed cancer of the stomach. And he refused further treatment when I said, after surgery, I couldn't cure you. He said, I'll go home, make the world beautiful. It's springtime. And when I die, I'll leave a beautiful world. He lived to 94, making the world beautiful. And he didn't choose to die until his wife died. Then it was like, I can turn the switch off now and, join my wife. But those are not accidents. And he became my teacher, and I spent a lot of time with him, seeing how beautiful the world was through his eyes. And again, it's give it a shot. You see, again, if you're afraid to fail, I mean, I ask people to draw a picture, and you get, my 10-year-old son did for me because I'm not good at drawing. Hey, ma'am, you're confronting cancer, and you're afraid what grade you're going to get in art? But then there are other people who literally will travel. See, I'm in Connecticut. Somebody comes down from Canada to come to a meeting. I say, I want to tell you something. You won't die when you're supposed to. How do you know? You traveled all that distance. And studies show this, that the patients who traveled the furthest do better. I mean, doctors have run these studies, So that's part of why when people go to all these healers all over the planet, I have no idea whether they're better because of what they're like in traveling halfway around the world to go to some healer, or whether the healer is really helping them. I mean, I do know there's energy and that we can heal. There's a book out called The Energy Cure by Bill Bengtson. And, he describes curing mice of cancer. And I always say, they don't believe in him, but you inject it into them. He works energy over the cage. And it's not just him. I mean, he's teaching everybody how to do it in his book. And I've seen this kind of thing work in some of our pets at home who were supposed to die and didn't. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I was loving them. And I realized you're doing what he said in his book.
Sending them good energy.
Yeah. And it's universal energy. I mean, it's, as I said, it's not that there's some exceptional healer, but they're conducting it. I mean, Olga Worrell, who I mentioned earlier, I had injured my leg training for a marathon, and it was really very painful, hard to walk. And she spoke at a medical meeting, a holistic medical meeting. When she was done, my wife said, "Honey, why don't you go and ask her to heal you?" I said, "It's nuts. What are you talking about? That she can heal? Put your hands on." So my wife went over and said, "Olga, would you help my husband?" Well, then I had to sit down and let her put her hands on me. She put her hands on my leg. They were like two hot irons. And that's what Bengston describes too. You're flowing the energy to the person or the creature. And 5 minutes later, I got up and walked away perfectly well. And again, I say, I've had that experience. I believe. I know it's possible. So
okay, so let me ask you this question because, you know, I mean, there's what I think, but I would like to hear what you think. I mean, because there are a lot of people that believe that it is the healer that is healing you. You know, now my belief is that the healer is just the vehicle for transmitting the energy from the ethos into the body of the person, and it's that individual who needs to take that energy and do something with it. Shift their energy, transform, transmute, and not the healer. And I get these emails, my wife has stage 4 cancer. They give her 3 weeks to live. Can you heal her? And it's just like, I can't heal anybody. I can facilitate. Right. You know what I mean? But I can't fix you. That's not my job.
Said it very well. He said, "Hey, Dad, we're the battery cables." I loved it. So we are the battery cables. And I would tell, like the husband who called up, say, "Look, put your hands on your wife. Visualize her as being healthy and doing all the things she loves to do. And let that energy come and flow through your hands into her," you see, to make that happen. And that's why the hands get incredibly hot. And the healers all describe that same sensation. I'm not saying it's easy to be that kind of battery cable, and carry that energy through to the person. But it's something we're all capable of. And yes, I do it on my family and all the time, because what do I have to lose? And, I keep working at it and take time every day to do that. And I'd say the same thing to everybody else, that you are simply being the conductor of the energy. You could call it the creative energy. I like to, in a sense, define God as intelligent, loving, conscious energy. So you funnel that into the person. And the simple way of doing it is seeing them as well. You see, these themes are so universal. What's his name? Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind. He talks about the same thing, that if you're doing a healing, you picture the person. You don't walk in saying, "Oh, look what's wrong with this person." Then it's all the negative stuff. One day, a few months ago, my wife started the day with 3 sentences that began with, "I can't." Honey, what are you doing to yourself when you keep saying, "I can't, I can't, I can't"? And every physical therapist will say that to the person they're working with. Stop saying "I can't." I'll try. Make the effort. Switch that message. Because when you keep saying "I can't," what are you telling your body? We can't do it. And the negative, I always say, Monday morning is the best example. More heart attacks, strokes, suicides, and illnesses. So your body knows what you're feeling, and you need to give it that joyful message. And see yourself, sporting, working, if you enjoy your job, doing all dancing, going on vacation, it doesn't matter, going fishing, but the things you love to do. And then your body gets a different image. And we're all capable, as I say, of doing it. So there's no harm in trying. See, again, I don't feel like I'm a failure if I don't cure somebody, with my energy. I'm making an effort. I'm trying. That to me is the important part.
Well, you made the comment about your wife saying I can't. And, my usual comeback line is, well, can you not do it? Or is it really that you don't want to do it? Because if you just don't want to do it, just admit it to yourself and say, I don't want to do it. And then deal with that.
Well, it's when you have a husband, it's part of why, because my wife has had MS, multiple sclerosis, for like 50 years. So when it's your husband, it's easier to say no than if I get somebody to come in to get her to do something, But I've learned to say, no, honey, you're going to do it. Don't tell me I can't. And then she always does, because I've gotten tough in that way, compassionate, but also, tough when she just wants to deny something or not do something that's good for her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And compassionate at the same time. I mean, that's another lesson that, because Joseph Campbell, reading something he wrote, he said, when you're going through hell, ask yourself, what am I to learn from this? And that has helped me, that, you went through with your husband, I go through with my wife, that, I'd love to cure her, and make sure she does all the things that are good for her. But I've also learned, stop being the doctor, and telling her what to do and prescribing, and just be compassionate. Then you have a nice day. So I can help, but coming from my heart, if you know what I mean, and not my head. And when she needs help, being there to help her instead of telling her, no, you need to do that, you did it. It's just being there.
What about laughter? I love to laugh. I think laughing is just so important. What do you think?
Well, we know that now. Let me give you two examples. One was done many years ago by a graduate student. And it was interesting that he got interested in this because he gave a man and a woman who were actors 2 scripts. One, the man has murdered the woman's husband, and they meet. And he drew their blood while they're acting. Then he gave them a comedy routine, and he drew their blood again. In the tragedy, the immune function went down in both of them, and the stress hormone levels went up in their blood work. In the comedy, immune function went up, stress hormone levels down. Then a study over in Europe, I forgot what country it was done in, they asked a group of cancer patients to laugh 4, 5, 6 times a day for no reason. Just laugh every few hours. Then they had the control group where they, said, hey, if something funny happens, laugh, but don't add any laughter. The group that laughed for no reason lived longer, had a better survival statistic. And, all these things make sense because they're changing your body chemistry. It's not something magical or just because you feel good. It changes your chemistry. So when you're lonely, it changes it. When you're depressed, angry, all these things affect your chemistry. And what I try to tell people when they're having negative feelings, because a friend of mine gave me this example. She said, Bernie, when you're hungry, do you get upset? I said, no. What do? I get something to eat. Okay. And if you don't like how you're feeling,
bed picnic.
Ask yourself, what nourishment do you need? And I love that, symbolic thought. So if you don't like how you're feeling, say, what nourishment do I need to bring into my life to eliminate this feeling? And in that way, the charcoal under pressure becomes a diamond. See, and the experience, I often will say to people, what are you experiencing? Because the words they use, when I say that, I mean they could be going through a divorce, lost their job, have cancer. What is it like to be going through this? And they come up with words: failure, pressure, constricting, roadblock, draining. And some come up with wake-up call, new beginning, blessing. That's fine. But when they come up with negative words, I always say, how do those words fit your life? And boy, they look at me like, wow, thank you. Because they know that's what they need to fix in their life. Say, what's causing the pressure? Why do you feel like a failure? And to really work on those things. And then when they do, it helps them emotionally and physically. Because then those memories, Alice Miller, when I came across this paragraph, I won't read you the whole thing, but like the beginning and end of it, she said, our childhood is stored up in our bodies. Although we can repress it, we can never alter it. And it ends with, and someday the body will present its bill, for it is as incorruptible as a child, who while still whole in spirit will accept no compromises, and it will not stop tormenting us until we stop evading the truth. And I may add, in studies done of college students, medical students, draw you a picture, fill out a personality profile, look them up 35 years later, you can predict what diseases they're going to get from their personality and their drawings. And as one psychiatrist, Caroline Thomas at Johns Hopkins, said, I could tell where they were going to get cancer. From
Can you give an example of that? That's
well, it's simple in this sense that, as she said, if, for instance, if you didn't have hands, see, then how do you reach out? How do you get a grip on things? So they were more likely to have emotional troubles, psychological problems later in life. People who drew themselves with their arms wide apart, straight out, more likely to have heart problems. And to me, the message is they're exposing their heart. Everybody can, come and get something from them. It's like everybody can say, I want you to hug me, I want you to hug me, and drain them because they can't say no to anybody. People who had their arms in different positions, which she called ambivalent, were more likely to get cancer. And the healthiest was just your hands at your sides, a neutral position. So again, like if somebody drew a family and said, gee, nobody has a nose, well, then how do you breathe life? How do you inspire? Or there are no ears on the family. Then nobody's listening to anybody else. So, you don't have to be a therapist at times to see that. And the self-esteem. I mean, one boy, again, I get a kick out of. He came in the office, and at the bottom of the page, there wasn't enough room. There were no legs. So I said, see, my reaction was, are you feeling stuck, trapped? What happened? No legs. He said, turn the page over. I turned the page over. He finished on the other side. Now, there's a kid who has good self-esteem. He doesn't fit on one page. And that's what's wonderful. People always figure out how to do what they need to do. I mean, he could have gotten another piece of paper, and added it. But, and then another boy who said to me, the kids are teasing me in the locker room in the gym. Can you fix my body, please? I said, I'll fix it, but I want you to draw a picture of me, of yourself, a picture for me of yourself in the operating room. Gave him a full box of crayons. He takes the black crayon, draws a table, operating table, and what looks like an insect on the table, just this little squiggly black thing, and even wrote me in black on the page. I showed it to his parents. I said, look, I will fix his body so the kids stop teasing him, but you have to understand he needs your love. If that's his image of himself, is he going to spend his life having plastic surgery and have no self-esteem and self-worth? And again, that affects them because it's their child's drawing. It's not me judging them. And another was a child with cancer who said, I don't get enough time for my family. I don't have to talk to 6 people in the family and ask them their schedule. I said, honey, draw me a picture of your family. She's sitting on a chair all by herself. Her 3 brothers and sisters and the parents are on a sofa with an empty seat on the sofa, but she's not on it. And the parents' arms are wrapped around everybody else. That really had an impact on the family, and they thanked me for that picture. Or another woman, the numbers 3 and 2 were all over her picture. And when you look at the family, there are 4 people in it. But Mama has only 2 drinks on a tray for her brother and her father. And she's off by herself in another corner of the picture. So the 3 and 2, come back to the other 3 people and the mother paying attention to 2 of them and not to her. And as I say, those numbers are a way that show what we're storing within us.
So, if we're able to hold in all of this information, and retain all of this memory, we talked a little bit about doing energy work, but what else can we do to release that or transform that or transmute what we're holding on to?
I think it's both through words and symbols. One is, a word I like is abandon. You can abandon your past. You can forgive. Well, let me just give you a quote, okay? This is from a woman I've been taking care of for over 30 years. She should have been dead a long time ago. She's still around being my teacher. Her parents both committed suicide, told their children to kill themselves. She's the only member of her family still alive. Everybody else committed suicide. When I said to her, show me a baby picture of yourself so I can show you, that you're a child of God and somebody to love, she said, my parents were real estate agents. I have a picture of the house, nothing of myself. But this is something she came to. She found faith and love. She said, I had no control over the parents who raised me or the experiences I was exposed to. But when I let love into my prison, it changed every negative item in it, meaning the experiences in my life, and turned them into something meaningful. Okay? So how did I help her? I listened to her, something I learned from Helen Keller. Deafness is darker by far than blindness. So when she would come into the office enraged at her history and her family and what's going through, she had an autoimmune disease. She was attacking her own body with all this rage inside of her. And I sat and listened to her because I didn't know what the hell to do. I mean, she would rant and rave, and I listened. And ultimately, I realized she emptied it out because I sat there listening. And then came the love, came in. And that's what people need to do. Let it out. Express it. Keep a journal. Find somebody who'll listen to you. See, not somebody who'll say, go read Bernie Siegel's book. Hey, stop. If they're not ready for the book, they're not going to read it. You want to buy them a copy? Fine. Give it to them. But if it sits on a shelf, don't criticize them. They have to be ready. And one lawyer, and I always say he had to be an exceptional lawyer, he was getting his car repaired, walked into a used bookstore, found my book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, first one I wrote. And he started reading it, took it home. And he talked about how he changed his life and abandoned all that stuff in the past. And his cancer disappeared. The sad part is the doctor didn't want to know what he did. Because he said, can I tell you what I've been doing? Now, I keep saying the sad part over and over, that doctors talk about spontaneous remissions. So you don't learn from them. Solzhenitsyn in his book Cancer Ward used a concept that I love. He talked about self-induced healing. And interesting, when you talk about drawings, how does he describe it? As fluttering out of the book, a rainbow-colored butterfly. And I knew he knows what I'm talking about. The rainbow is your life in order, all the colors where they belong. And the butterfly is a symbol of transformation. So you learn, you have cancer, you transform your life, create order, and lo and behold, your body clears itself of the disease.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there and ask you this question. But are there cases, or is there ever a time in dealing with someone where giving them the opportunity to just transition is really what they want, or where you need to let them go? Because that's really the choice they want to make.
Oh, no, I have no problem. I help people die, too, when they get tired of their body. I mean, I was going to add that the bitterest people in heaven, where I'm an outside consultant, so I go up there frequently, and I said to people, what are you so bitter about? You're in heaven. Well, you don't know my life. I said, well, what are you complaining about? He said, I ate vegetables for 30 years. I meditated 4 times a day. I exercised every morning, running 5 miles, and I died anyway. So he said, I would have slept late and had a lobster if I knew that was going to happen. So I try to tell people, don't try to not die. This is not what I'm talking about. Enhance the quality of your life. Enjoy your life. But when my father said to my mother, hey, Rose, I need to get out of here, she said, oh, help me. He wants to get out of bed. I said, Ma, he's talking about his body. So she said, okay, if you need to go, it's okay. And he died 2 days later with every member of the family, many generations in the room, my mother telling stories. So he died laughing, looking wonderful. And there was not one person in that room who walked out frightened about death or really in pain because of that experience. And I've seen it with my mother and my in-laws. None of them had any trouble dying. As a matter of fact, I will share. My father-in-law fell off his back porch and became quadriplegic. Lived to 97, though. Incredible guy, great teacher for me. And I may add, when I asked him for advice for seniors, he said, yeah, tell them to fall on something soft. But then, you see, when he was ready to go, one night we're there to feed him and give him his vitamins. And he said, no, I'm done. And he died that night. No problem. We knew what he was telling us. So again, you see, most people die in the hospital in the middle of the night because the doctor isn't there to stop you, and your family isn't there in many cases to making you feel guilty. And I'm not saying this to create guilt. I mean, there are children and mothers who will die when their kids or parents leave the room. My mother, I knew, wouldn't die with her children in the room. So I'd walk out every few hours and leave her with her friends. And sure enough, when I stepped out of the room, she died. I wasn't feeling guilty. That's my mother. You know, she's being nice to her kids. And those are things we have to understand. So you can tell a lot. You know, when somebody wrote to me that my husband failed, you know, he died of cancer, I said he wasn't a failure. He died surrounded, like my father, with every member of the family in the room with him. If he was a failure, he wouldn't be doing it with everybody around them. So people can understand how the individual feels about their life, too, by what their death is like. And as I said, don't try to avoid dying. Try to enjoy living. And one letter, just so you understand, the woman wrote, I was told I had 2 months to live, and I agreed with my doctor this time. So I went home and I bought a dog. I put it in a backyard wildlife habitat. I laughed more, and I took some vitamins. And the letter ends with, I didn't die, and now I'm so busy I'm killing myself. Help, where do I go from here? My advice, take a nap. See, I call it, she's now burning up, not burning out. But what has added to her life? Hey, she went home and did all these things. And relationships make a difference. Whether it's a dog, a cat, or, you know, marriage, or anything else, even taking care of pets and plants. I mean, I've had people with 12 cats, and I said to the family, do not remove them. Your mother's dead if you do that. But if you tell your mother, I can't find anybody to take care of those 12 cats, she can't die. Now, with women, though, take care of yourself, too. Because a quote, I can't die till they're all married and out of the house. That's her 9 kids. When did she die? 20 years later, when the 9th kid left home. So be your own child and love yourself and enjoy your life.
Right. Well, Bernie, I am looking at the clock, and we have just enough time for you to tell people where they can get your book, anything you might have coming up that you'd like to announce, that kind of thing.
Well, my website is very simple, Bernie Siegel, SIEGELMD, BernieSiegelMD.com. You can see my schedule there. A lot of these articles I mentioned, there's something there called a webinar also that you'd enjoy because you can see a lot of the drawings I'm talking about. In the book are 70 drawings, plus a lot of things by me, you know, speaking and written in the book. But you could look at the webinar and get a good idea of the drawings and what I'm trying to tell you. And if you want to get in touch with me through that, you can order the books through the website. There's something called Wisdom of the Ages run by our son and his wife, where you can order all these things, or, you know, good old Barnes and Noble and Amazon and things like that, because the book has been out just about a month, a little short of a month now. And so it should be available everywhere.
So if they order the book,
you know, the medical profession too.
Well, you're just a rattler, Dr. Bernie.
Thank you.
But that's why we love you.
I like that term.
If they ordered the book through your website, does it come signed?
Well, they could, yeah, that way. Because if they tell them, they'll mail it to me or hold it for me, and I sign it and then mail it to the person. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, to me, that's priceless and worth them buying it through your website because it comes signed. How good is that?
Yep.
Anyway, I know the music is going to be coming up here in just 1 second. So, Dr. Bernie, thanks so much for coming on. And it's a really great topic. And I think people, you know, if they're looking to heal themselves, not just from cancer, but to find out what's really going on inside themselves.
To heal your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, I always say, as the program ends, we all run out of time someday. So enjoy your lifetime.
Exactly. Okay. Bye, Dr. Bernie. And
bye,
I will talk to you again soon. Okay. All right. Bye. That's Dr. Bernie Siegel. His book is The Art of Healing, Uncovering Your Inner Wisdom and Potential for Self-Healing. His webpage is DrBernieSiegel.com. And we will be back with Zohara Hieronymus after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.